Aviation. So, Senator Patrick, you've got questions of the department as well.
I do, Chair, and I think I have a similar line of questioning tonight with CASA in relation to some of the questions you've just been asking, and I will be joining you in person for that. I'd like to go to Ms Brown, if I can. See, she was sitting at the table. Just in relation to the RASI funding, the Regional Airport Screening Infrastructure funding.
Certainly, Senator, and I might see if Ms Chappell can come to the table as well. She might be able to also help answering your questions.
Okay, thank you. So this is really just a follow-up from our last session where we were talking about funding for airport security. And I note that in a question on notice, question number 36, you advised, and I think this is correct, that the 2022-23 budget has an additional $28.5 million in the budget. Now, I presume that answer was prepared perhaps before the budget but released after the budget. Is that how that came about?
That's the right timing, yes.
Yeah, okay. Just because it had that budget information, I was just curious about that. Okay, so that's on top of the $50 million that was announced a couple of years ago. Is that correct, or has there been some additional funding in between?
I might get Ms Chappell just to confirm those numbers.
Certainly, Senator Patrick. Claire Chappell, Assistant Secretary of the Regional Environment Branch. So you're correct, that is a top-up to that program, and it takes the total funding envelope for that program to $94.5 million. Okay,
so one presumes that if an airport were funded by way of a grant for the security infrastructure, is it automatic that they then get assistance with the ongoing operating costs, which it appears to be something this money's been set aside for?
Yeah, that's correct. So the money is intended to top up the operating costs, and if there was an airport who had expended their allocation under the program, so they'd applied and they were receiving operational funding, it would top up that funding.
Okay, thank you. Now, I note that you made a claim that some element sensitive, which confuses me. I'm going to talk about three airports: Port Lincoln, Whyalla, and Mount Gambier. All three of those airports have been upgraded under this program, one presumed, because the upgrades have happened in the last sort of 6 to 12 months. Can you just confirm that those particular airports received RASI funding?
So you're right, Senator. The regulations as administered by Home Affairs do have security protocols around them. For that reason, we don't generally tend to refer to which airports are in. What I can say, though, is that the RASI program, goes through to June 2023, and with that top-up, we would expect that all airports that are receiving operational funding will have funding at least through until the end of this year.
Okay, so are you suggesting the regulation prohibits the naming of the recipients of the grants?
I'm not sure that the regulation prohibits it, but I understand the usual protocol is not to refer to which airports are and are not operating the enhanced security screening.
Okay. Whyalla has been mentioned in the past in these proceedings because it was going to get $52 per head or per ticket was going to be the cost for security. It cannot be a secret that there is security at Whyalla now, or Port Lincoln, or Mount Gambier. I've been through all of those airports and they have been upgraded, and anyone who regularly travels through that would know that. So that's what I want to talk about, those three particular airports. That doesn't reveal any secrets that have been, the funding cannot be secret, and that's the questions I'm going to ask you in relation to those three airports. So you'll understand my interest as a South Australian, particularly around those airports. So how much funding did Whyalla receive?
Senator, I believe we would have to, I might hand over to my colleague, Mr Vincent, who has the operational details of how that program runs.
Thank you.
Ben Vincent, Assistant Secretary, Aviation Programs Branch. Senator, as Ms Chappell mentioned, so I'm just trying to open up my, get to the relevant briefing, but generally individual details aren't released due to the...
but generally we know those airports have airport security at them. So, you know, I can understand when you've got airport sensitivity, but anyone listening to this would say, hang on, we know that those airports have been upgraded with airport security. And it's not unreasonable, therefore, to ask how much each of those airports received. And where I'm trying to get to is where each of these airports will, you know, what their burn rates are in terms of the cost of security, because I estimate it's some, you know, the estimates have been somewhere between $500,000 and $700,000 per annum. Actually, it might be slightly more than that. So they're going to burn through this funding at something like, you know, $60,000 a month. I'm trying to get to that point.
Senator Patrick, I'm just giving Mr Vincent a moment to see if he needs to refer that question to a superior officer.
Sure.
Just
No,
give him a second.
I understand there may well be some guidance that have been given about not releasing information, but those airports have had security upgrades under this, presumably under this program, and you know, I don't mind people advancing national security claims, but I can't see how anyone could reasonably think that an airport that you can walk through and go, well, I've just been through security, somehow that's a secret.
Senator, while my colleagues are conferring, we have done some internal modelling based on the airports that are receiving grant funding and the level of burn in terms of their operational call on the program. That modelling indicates that the airports involved will have their operational expenses covered through to the end of this year. Some will go longer, and it does depend on what they're drawing on and how often. But at the very least, we expect all of those airports to be covered at least until the end of 2022.
So, have all of those airports been granted a particular amount of funding, such that they're aware of how much they're covered off on?
Yes, Senator. RASI participating airports have a grant agreement with the department which sets out the amount of operational expenditure support available to them.
Sure. So again, the cost of covering off on security, if it's not covered by this program, falls back to the council because they operate the airports. And again, I'm finding difficulty in a response that says we're not going to tell the people of Whyalla or Port Lincoln or Mount Gambier when it is they're going to have to start put their hand in their pocket. I think it's most unreasonable to keep that information from those residents.
Well, Senator, perhaps I can give you Whyalla's total grant agreement at the moment.
Thank you.
$1.8 million in operating expenditure support. That is projected to extend, we're expecting that support will carry them right through this calendar year. Okay,
so through to at least December 22?
That's
okay, the other two I was going to ask for about Port Lincoln and Mount Gambier. That's the extent of my line of questioning.
I don't believe Mount Gambier has applied, but Port Lincoln currently has a operational expenditure support of $1.1 million.
Okay, so I remember Port Lincoln actually had its airport designed for security, so I presume they would have received money for the equipment that's associated with securing the airport. And then some of that would be left remaining as operational. Is that correct? Is that how it works?
Yes, so under the RASI program, there are capital grants available for the installation of equipment and operating expenditure support towards the cost of operations.
Okay, and in the case of Whyalla, in the case of both Whyalla and Port Lincoln then, I presume they both received a capital grant of some sort. I imagine Whyall's was much more because they had to change the entire airport, whereas Port Lincoln was better suited for security equipment. And
I believe so, Senator. I would just have to check on the detail of that to confirm, though. I've got OPEX numbers in front of me. I'll just have to confirm the CAPEX numbers.
all right, so if you could provide me with the CAPEX numbers and the operating cost breakdown for those two grants that you gave me, I'd appreciate that. And how are you actually paying that? Is it on a monthly basis, or is it you provide the council with a certain amount of money that's then set aside for payment over the remainder of the year? How's that done?
So CAPEX is paid on a milestone basis. OPEX is paid in arrears, taking into account actual costs on a monthly basis.
Okay, so that basically Wyler will invoice you on a monthly basis, and then you return those costs. Yeah, is that how it works?
That's right, Senator.
Okay, I might just go back to Miss Brown, because I have been talking to her about this in the past. So where are we at with the final model that will be used to ensure that once this RASI funding dries up, that we don't end up with people in Wyler paying an unreasonable amount, or people in the regions paying unreasonable amounts for their tickets because of security costs?
Senator, thank you for the question. We are very conscious of that and the commitments made. We are continuing to work with Department of Home Affairs to come up with a longer term solution, and that can be considered in a later MyEFO or budget once we've finalised that further work.
Okay, so if it's another budget, that's a next year thing, next calendar year thing, and the money will have run out. So I can accept MyEFO, which normally comes out in November, would tackle that problem. Is that where you set your target to have this problem resolved by MyEFO?
We are aiming to have something ready before the money expires.
And what are the? Can you just walk me through what the difficulties are with this? Because in very simple terms, what we're trying to do is perhaps amortise the cost of airport security between regions and cities, so that the regions don't pay the exorbitant costs that they do, and people in the city pay very little cost. What's the difficulty in the discussion? Because it's been going on since probably a year now.
Yeah. Look, I might raise one issue, and then Ms Chappell might be able to elaborate on it.
Sure. Thank you.
It's challenging during this estimation of costs during a period where aviation activity has been below normal levels. Because of COVID, aviation activity has fallen. So working out what real costs are, what average costs might be in that scenario is very, very challenging. So we are doing some further work to try and understand what might be more normal costs incurred with normal activity.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms Brown. We, as you're aware, we jointly commissioned a piece of work with the Department of Home Affairs that was led by Houston Kemp to examine this. And as part of that work, we went out to the airports that were involved in the RASI program. We didn't receive a whole lot of responses. And so being able to get some clear data about the nature of the costs and how they split out what's composed is really challenging for us. So some of the things that we need to consider and that we're thrashing through are the impact of the enhanced component of screening requirements as opposed to the normal business as usual screening costs, the wide range of costs that come under the banner of security, and the nature to which throughput impacts this. And so for some of the information that we did receive as part of the Houston Kemp process, for airports that had a similar level of throughput and a similar kind of remoteness consideration, those costs were wildly different. So I think just drilling down and understanding what's going on there is really important. The extent to which airlines pass those prices through to their consumers. It's not always a like for like. It depends on the mix, what business tickets are involved, that kind of thing. And then the extent to which higher ticket prices reduce the demand for regional travel. So there's some of the components that we're considering. It's a reasonably complex environment when we consider the costs that are being imposed, how they trickle down to whom, and then how that's passed on to the consumer.
Okay, thank you. You said Mr. Kemp had difficulty getting information. I mean, I would have thought that most operators would have cooperated with, or most councils would have cooperated with him. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't understand. I don't understand why that would be the case. They're airports that are in receipt of federal funding, and it would be of their benefit to assist you.
Yeah, look, it's a good point. So we received about 11 responses, if I remember correctly. I think part of it is perhaps how some of these airports hold their data, and so one of the things that we'll need to consider as part of what I've just run through is, are there ways that we can interact and gather that information from them in a way that's easy? But you're right, we would expect kind of a good deal of engagement from airports on this issue.
And so has the work concluded, or you're just accepting the whole and the data?
So that particular report has concluded, but I'm not sure that we have, for the reasons that I've outlined, there's further work that we need to do to drill down into some of those costs and understand them better.
Okay, so you're saying there will be more activity carried out?
Yes.
To try and get a handle on these costs?
Yes, that's correct.
Can you tell me if any South Australians councils have been cooperative with you?
I'm not sure, Senator. I'd have to take that one on notice.
All right, if you wouldn't mind, because I'm happy to pick up the phone and help you.
That'd be
All right, thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks, Senator Patrick. Did anybody else at the table have any more questions for airports? Could I just finally, I'm sorry, perhaps Ms Brown, rather than ask Mr McClure to come back up, I just want to check the Moorabbin Airport Master Plan. I understand that the Deputy Prime Minister's made a decision about that recently, and I just wanted to ask what the outcome of that has been.
Certainly, yes. The Minister has considered the Moorabbin Airport draft master plan recently and has decided not to approve that plan. He was concerned that there hadn't been sufficient clarity around what the plan was, and that sufficient regard been had to, or sufficient detail provided in the way in which the plan addressed the submissions that have been made by relevant users of the airport. But Mr McClure is back at the table, so he might be able to add to that.
So the outcome is that he's rejected that master plan. They've now got a period of time to
Yeah, so
respond,
the Act stipulates the Minister has notified Moorabbin Airport that their draft master plan's been refused. He's asked that they submit a fresh master plan within 180 days, though if they were to come to us and felt that timeline was challenging, we could work out something a little bit longer, but 180 days to come forward with a fresh master plan. Fresh means it's not start again. It's a statement of reasons is provided to the airport around the concerns of the Minister and where he would like more information or concerns to be addressed. So the airport would need to bring forward a updated, revised plan, particularly on those particular points. As Ms Brown said, it was really around addressing the submissions, and I think this is it's a good example where I think in the 2015 master plan, Moorabbin might have received about 7 submissions. This time it's been 130 odd, so it demonstrates that there is value in those stakeholders coming forward and participating in the process. But yeah, we'll work closely with Moorabbin on looking at those areas. There isn't any mandated community stakeholder consultation, but that'll need to be part of addressing some of those concerns.
and will you be expecting that some of those stakeholders who put forward submissions, that they be outlining their concerns again to you, or engaging with the Moorabbin airport operator?
I'd very much encourage them to engage with the airport to try to make sure that their needs are well understood and work constructively with them.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Can I just add, sorry, from that previous question around Archfield, apparently that concrete factory was there before it was privatised, so it wasn't something that was approved under our processes. It was a legacy development on that airport site.
Right. Perhaps the aircraft have changed rather than the industry has changed.
Yeah.
thank you for being so prompt in following that up. Senator Sheldon, back to you.
Thanks, Chair. And just some follow-up questions, Chair, on the Moorabbin Airport. Just wondering what to the department, what advice did you provide to the Deputy Prime Minister and his office regarding the Moorabbin master plan?
I can't go into the detailed advice we provided, but the Airports Act sets out the matters that need to be addressed in a master plan. It's fairly detailed, covers a whole range of areas around environmental and noise forecasts and a whole other areas that need to be addressed through a master plan. So we basically assess the plan against those aspects in the Act, but I can't go too specifically to our advice to the Minister.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you are able to just give us some detail, aren't you, about some of the advice that you gave to the Minister regarding this? What's the department's view on this matter?
That would go to advice to government, Senator.
Yes.
So when you're in government, I guess you can have access to that.
Yeah, that's yes. Thanks, Minister. Just want to then just say, what's the I know you've touched on this in your previous question, but is there anything additional you can tell us about the department's view on the Moorabbin Airport master plan?
I think what we would say,
concerns with the draft
master plan. I think what we would say is that the airport has been provided with that statement of reasons so that they can understand where the concerns are, and that we'll work constructively with them in those concerns. And look, it's no secret that a lot of that's around the general aviation population on the airport, and making sure that their views are heard and needs addressed as far as reasonable.
Do you believe that the department has sufficient handle on the airport development activities? Do you feel you've got a good feel for what the challenges are and concerns that have been raised?
There's processes in place to make sure that developments are brought forward, whether it's, as I said, the major developments are covered under what's a major development plan. That needs to be triggered under a threshold, so activity can happen on the airport that doesn't trigger a major development plan, but then need to be assessed by our on-field airport building controllers, environmental officers. One of the considerations for the building controller is that any development aligns with what was in the master plan that the Minister had agreed. So in the case of Moorabbin, any building done over the last several years would have had to align with what was approved in the 2015 master plan.
So do you feel that you've got sufficient oversight skills within the team to be able to properly assess the master plan as they're developed?
We get advice
both Moorabbin but also generally.
We get advice from, as I said, in regards to safety, we get advice from CASA in regards to flight paths and efficiencies. We get advice from Air Services, Environmental Department looks at everything from the environmental plan. So I think that there is opportunities to get that expertise and the advice required for us to do an assessment.
Chair, I've got no further questions, and I think we're, unless there's other people who've got questions, that we're ready for another line of questioning, but on regional.
Okay, thank you. Well, one final question from me on airports, Mr. McClure. Thank you for being patient. Further to Senator Sheldon's question about, the advice you're able to take on, the regulator, CASA, has said that their job is not to be engaged with the success isn't the word they use, but the growth of the aviation industry. It is to regulate its safety. Where would you be getting advice from that would help you make an assessment around the flourishing of the general aviation and aviation industry more broadly around master plans? Is that somebody else you could be bringing in to provide advice on that regard?
I think we have a range of forums through which we consult broadly across industry. One is the General Aviation Advisory Forum, I think the network, GAN. So we have various forums, various engagement processes we use to gather information across the viability and the challenges facing the whole sector as a whole.
Thank you. It feels a little bit like the frog in boiling water analogy, where nobody really recognised what a crisis was until we got to the crisis point. Now everybody's, of course, very aware of it. So thank you very much. That we